Good morning, everyone. I'm joined by Fire Chief Teresa Everett, Northeast City Council member Michael A. Patterson, Corporation Counsel Linda Kingsley, City Council President Miguel A. Meléndez Jr., Commissioner of Neighborhood and Business Development Dana Miller, and Rochester Police Chief David Smith. I want to thank you all for coming early in the morning. I appreciate members of the media. I know you're busy, but I'm glad that you are here. The folks that are here, along with city council members and members of the administration, have talked a lot lately, especially last year, a lot about the impact that deficient properties are having on our city. I was saying to the team that just this morning, my staff was briefing me on a call that came in at 9 o'clock about a deficient property. Chief Everett's team at the RFD have been busy with dangerous fires in vacant buildings over the past several months. Commissioner Miller's team have been busy identifying and addressing code violations in our city's what we call the worst of the worst properties. And some of these properties, you won't find them in some of our surrounding suburbs because they wouldn't go for it. And we're not going for it here either. And you've heard me and the Corporation Counsel a lot lately talk about the ways we're utilizing her team in the law department to hold both landlords and tenants accountable for their responsibilities when it comes to rental properties. Now, don't get me wrong. The vast majority of property owners in the city of Rochester are responsible and law-abiding and maintain their properties with pride. However, a small contingent of irresponsible property owners are creating significant problems across the city. And this has cost us money, this has cost us time, this has cost us angst in neighborhoods with residents who are sick of it. The number of calls that we get related to these properties has gone through the roof. It's skyrocketed. So we will be introducing 3 legislative items in May that will help put an end to some of the challenges we are seeing. The first will establish a new vacant registry. This registry will require property owners to alert the city if the building they own remains vacant for more than 60 days. As we all know, the city is facing a growing vacant building crisis. These buildings, by their very nature, present significant potential health and safety hazards to their neighborhoods, public employees, and the general public. They are more likely to be set on fire, are more likely to be used for illegal activities like drug sales and sex trafficking, and ultimately drag down entire neighborhoods. Creating this vacant building registry will help ensure that the city is aware of all of the vacancies in our neighborhoods and help us hold owners accountable for the condition of their properties. And for those who do not maintain their vacant buildings responsibly, the Vacant Building Registry will enable us to take over sooner, whether that means securing a building to prevent injury or taking an owner to court and having ownership of their disregarded property transferred to the city. So if someone cannot maintain their property, we will maintain it for them. We will take it and get it to someone who knows how to maintain it. Secondly, I am proposing that Commissioner Dana Miller and the city's business and neighborhood development team, in consultation with the Corporation Counsel Linda Kingsley, create a clear and concise landlord-tenant Bill of Rights. This will be a document that spells out significant rights and responsibilities of both landlords and tenants of residential properties in the city and make sure both sides understand their roles and relationships. We, meaning the city, will send this document once per year to every known rental property in the city and to every known landlord. I believe this Bill of Rights will be an essential step to addressing the pressing housing concerns we have here in Rochester. It's critical that all sides clearly understand their responsibilities. And lastly, I am submitting legislation. We will be submitting legislation, and Council will be happy about this. This was done in consultation with Council about establishing new fines or increasing existing fines related to poor property maintenance, code violations, and unauthorized demolitions. In fact, we will double the fine for unaddressed code violations and cut the time between tickets in half. Under this proposal, Penalties for some code violations will start at $100. Health and safety violations start at $250, and immediate hazards start at $500. And instead of 60 days between tickets, we will now be able to issue tickets with increased fines for each penalty every 30 days. In addition, you all know that we have expanded our legal team to include an attorney who is fully focused on property actions. But his time is too valuable, and I believe we should be compensated by irresponsible and uncooperative property owners whom we have to pursue in courts. So we are introducing legislation that will include fines of up to $1,000 per day if the City of Rochester is required to bring legal action to get a property owner to correct outstanding code violations. I'm not interested in being anyone's parent. The City of Rochester is not interested in being anyone's parent. We don't have time, when we have so many other pressing issues in the city, to chase people to fix things that they are supposed to fix. So I want to serve clear notice to our delinquent landlords. If you won't correct the code violation, we will hold you accountable for that. And that means a charge that's being passed on to you that the city is currently incurring. You have a copy of the legislation. These proposals will go to City Council for the May meeting. We've been working very closely with the Council President and many members of Council, including Council Member Michael A. Patterson is here, Mitch Gruber as well, have worked very closely on these progress that we're making here on this. And also I want to thank the Housing Quality Task Force. Many of these recommendations are the result of things that have also come out of the Housing Quality Task Force. So with that, I want to give the Council President the opportunity to comment about this legislation. He is very familiar with it, as we have talked about it for a while. I think we had a meeting, back in December? November or December? September, we were talking about this. So I want to have Council President Miguel A. Meléndez talk on some of these items. Councilman.
Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'd like to thank the Mayor, Corporation Counsel Kingsley, Commissioner Miller, and all who served on the Housing Quality Task Force for their work to first identify some of the key challenges that we have in terms of code enforcement and housing quality. But we've all spent a lot of energy on this since that task force has concluded. I'd like to also acknowledge MBD Committee Chair Michael Patterson and also Finance Chair Mitch Gruber, who both, alongside me, have had several follow-up meetings with the administration to really push the envelope on what we can do here and have discussions about what's necessary for us to get folks into compliance. And that's what this is about for me. This is about expediting code enforcement. We have far too many properties in the City of Rochester that have been without accountability in the past, and we're looking towards the future to have accountability when it comes to compliance, regulatory compliance, as well as condition of properties. And I think these legislative items that we're going to be proposing in the month of May and debating in May will provide opportunities for the City of Rochester and for City Council to take legislative action that will get to a better place for housing quality and code conditions. For many, it's been the cost of doing business. The fees and fines that are in the current code are really calculated as, well, should I pay the fine or should I not? If I don't fix the property, it's actually cheaper. So what we're hoping to do through this process is for those that are out of compliance and those that decide that they want to own property in the City of Rochester but not be accountable to their tenant, to the city, that we create a fee schedule and a fine schedule that will really be more aggressive, but also, I think, force people to think hard about whether or not they're going to fix the property or leave it in a delinquent status. This is not targeting people who are doing things right. People who are doing things right in the City of Rochester and who maintain their properties, we thank you. We appreciate you. We know that there's many, many good housing providers in our community. This is about those who are not providing that high quality and housing to our residents. I think the vacant property registry as well is something that is much needed. We've talked with the administration, council members have talked with the administration about, you know, how do we keep track of when a property goes vacant? There's no ifs, ands, or buts about some of the challenges that we've had related to vacant housing, whether it's been arson-related issues when it comes to vacancies, or squatting, and those kind of things. So to have a registry where the city is on top of this in a meaningful way, and where there's penalties if you do not cooperate, I think will also be significant. And then the last thing I'd like to highlight, which the mayor mentioned, is, you know, really there's been a lot of misinformation about tenants' rights, landlords' rights, responsibilities, et cetera. During the pandemic, we certainly have seen many instances where there's confusion. You know, if you don't, if you live in a property that's has some code violations, it doesn't mean that you don't pay your rent. So things like that, we're hoping to clarify and codify, and really move forward with a plan that will allow every citizen that's renting property in the City of Rochester, and every landlord that has a property or housing provider that has a property in the City of Rochester, to hopefully be on the same page. Because many of these issues play out in court, many of these issues play out in the eviction process, and there's clearly disconnect between some of the information that's put out there and what's actually the law. So with that, I'd like to thank again the administration, thank everyone who's been working on these issues, and I look forward to debating this in the month of May, and hopefully moving forward with a stronger housing and compliance package as we continue to make progress in the City of Rochester. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I mean, just to give you the scale of the example of why this is important. So you get somebody that owns a big warehouse, right? They own a big warehouse in the neighborhood. They walk away from it. They're late on their taxes. They got all types of code violations. It catches fire. We have to demolish it. That's money to the taxpayer. That's money that we have to pay. We want to say that we need to put an end to that. And we're going to move quicker in terms of taking those properties from people who don't know how to handle them. And what we've done before is just kind of said, we'll get to it. No, we're not going to get to it. We're going to get to it faster. We have to make sure, the residents of the City of Rochester have to make sure that they demand a higher level of standard. And what's happened so many times in our community is that we are so beaten down that we think that we should just accept things that wouldn't be accepted anywhere else in any of the surrounding suburbs that we live in. Wouldn't be accepted. And we have to let neighbors know that they won't accept it, but more importantly, us in city government, we have to understand that we're not going to accept it. And guess what? It takes more work. It takes more diligence. It takes stick-to-itiveness. But we're going to do that because that is the only way that we will end the blight that we have seen in some of our neighborhoods. And some people have as much business being a landlord as I have as piloting a space shuttle. They shouldn't be in the business. And I hope that this sends a message to those that they will keep their day job and not try to go into the business if they don't have the skills, sophistication, or knowledge to run a property, be it a home or a commercial structure. And I hope that this is just one step in the many things that we are doing. As I said, we will update every quarter. First quarter, January, February, March, we updated with the Housing Quality Task Force. Here we are, April, May, June. Second quarter, this is our update, and then we'll continue to provide those updates. Now to expand on some of this information, she may have some things to add. Corporation Counsel Linda Kingsley, her office has helped to work on this issue of combating many of the challenges that we've seen that we've been facing with housing and properties within the City of Rochester. Linda.
Thank you, Mayor. As the Mayor noted, this administration has been focused heavily in the past year on addressing the issues related to quality housing and safe structures throughout the city. Deteriorated, vacant, and neglected properties impact entire neighborhoods and reduce the value of adjacent properties. They create a fire risk for the neighborhood and for the firefighters that have to respond to those properties. They additionally become locations where there is drug and sex trafficking and often become unsafe havens for the homeless. The Vacant Property Registry is a new concept which will allow us to wrap our arms around the problem. We currently collect information on vacants as they are discovered, but we have no formalized way to track them and to track the addresses of all residential and commercial vacants. Property owners will pay a fee under this proposal based on the number of units for a residential, or there's a separate fee for commercial properties. The fee will increase if they go into a second year of being vacant. But more importantly, they are required when they file their vacant application to present us with a plan. What are they going to do? Are they going to demolish? Are they going to rehabilitate? Are they keeping it vacant for a period, and if so, how are they securing it? It should be noted that there is an exception for single-family owner-occupied for so-called snowbirds who leave the city for a few months in the winter, as long as they meet certain criteria about maintaining the property that's within the legislation. We're also proposing a landlord-tenant bill of rights and responsibilities, and this is a way to educate both landlords and tenants of both their rights and their responsibilities, and that applies to tenants and landlords. They will be distributed in a number of ways, including at least an annual mailing to tenants and landlords. They will be attached to C of Os when they're granted, and they will be distributed by code enforcement officers on other opportunities when they interact with landlords and tenants. The third proposal increases code enforcement fines to a level comparable to other major cities. Our fines were seriously behind the times, and also reduce the time of ticketing from 60 days to 30 days, which is what the state law sets it at. It additionally creates a significant penalty for demolishing a property without a permit. An illegal demolition creates risks to the neighborhood and will not be acceptable. Finally, it's only when the property owners refuse to respond to notices and orders that we take the step of having our housing attorney take them to state court or city court. State law permits us to statutorily request fines of up to $1,000 per day in such a case, and we need this legislation to authorize us to do that. Additionally, this proposal authorizes the law department to seek the recovery of our legal fees. The message needs to be sent that should you refuse to address your violations and force us to take legal action, there will be stiff and very expensive penalties. We have also added language to various provisions of our code that require owners who own in the name of limited liability corporations, which is a very common practice, to identify the individuals behind that entity. While you have a right to own as an LLC, we need to be able to figure out if a single individual is hiding behind a lot of different corporations. This may not be a popular proposal with some landlords. As the mayor stated, most property owners are responsible owners, and most tenants are responsible tenants. Those individuals have nothing to fear from this legislation. However, those that choose to ignore their legal obligations will find themselves in a much more uncomfortable situation.
And I would urge anyone, walk some of our neighborhoods and see some of the vacant structures that people just think they can walk away from. You know why they think they can do that? Because it's the city of Rochester with the 5 poorest zip codes. And that Miss Smith, who's been living on that street for 40 years, that she won't care. Well, guess what? I care, and she cares. And then the other issue that I can't highlight enough, and this is why I have the fire chief here, is that I will never forgive a landlord if one of my firefighters is injured or killed in one of those structures. Period. They have had to go into structures that should not have that they should not have fallen into the condition that they're in. And we've had minor injuries, but if we don't get this under control, we're going to have major injuries. And they've been a magnet for people to set fires and do all types of other negative things in. So this is a way to correct that. As I say, there are no silver bullets, but we do multiple things, and we do it in sequence, and we don't stop. We don't stop. I made it clear last year that this Housing Quality Task Force was going to be not a shelf document, that it was going to be something that we were going to make sure that we revisited, added to, and supplemented within the city's control. We don't have control over what they do in Albany or what they do in DC, but we do have control on what we do here in City Hall. So this is things that are within our control. If you have concerns about what the county does or the state does or the feds do, you got to talk to them. But we are going to do what we can do that was within our purview to make sure that we have a safe and vibrant community. With that, I will take your questions on this topic. If you have off topics, you better hold them to the end, then I'll take them. But on this housing legislation, I'll take questions. Let's start from it was my right, and then go this way. Yes.
So the names behind the LLC, is that retroactive? I mean, if I bought 10 properties in 2017 with just an LLC, do I have to?
From now on, when you have to file anything related to our building registry or our vacant property registry, so if you own a property already and you have a new filing, you will be required to disclose who's behind the LLC.
Would that also mean if I'm fined for a code violation, do I have to file paper with that? Thus, I would have to.
Not for the filing of the code violation, but the next time you came up for a C of O or anything like that, we would then demand that you do that filing.
You got people, and just let me expand on this point. You have people who have like 12, 15 properties, and they shouldn't have 0 because they don't know how to maintain them. They watch something, they watch fix up this house, and they decided, hey, I'm going to be a landlord. I know plenty of great landlords. They own 20, 30 properties, but guess what? Their properties are all great. Too many people think that they can get into this business. I was a banker for 20-something years, so I've seen it. You get too many people that think they can get into a business where they have no business getting into the business. None. And they need to go pick another career.
So among the tenants I've been talking to, code enforcement is a huge complaint. They say, as you said, that code enforcement and the fines are so small that landlords just consider it the cost of doing business. So when we talk about increasing fines, by how much? What percentage are we saying?
The code enforcement fines for Municipal Code Violations Bureau double in each category from what they were before. And this $1,000 a day, think about how that could add up for a landlord. If we go into city court or state court and we get $1,000 a day. We have already, for a few landlords that we've brought these larger suits in state Supreme Court, we've gotten $8,000 fines, $20,000 fines, so it's starting to hit people in the pocketbook. And if a court is willing to also give us attorney's fees, that's a nice little addition on there. We need to make it so it's too expensive to be a cost of doing business.
So
How?
the word vacant is a very complex word I'm learning this week. So I spoke to a landlord on Monday who has a home on Goodman. He has tenants there. They're not his tenants, they're squatters that he has to evict. How do you hold them accountable when there's multiple calls into 911 into the city to get these squatters removed? How do you jump through that loop of getting them out so this good landlord can do his job? Well,
I think you have to go through a process. The word vacant, I disagree with the word vacant being complex. It's not complex. I mean,
It's defined in the code.
It's defined in the code. It's not complex. So Chase, it's very important that we not make excuses for vacant properties, period. You do have people that are squatters. We have to go through the process to get them out. But one of the ways in which we can make sure that we won't have squatters and other things is when a house becomes vacant, that is taken care of immediately. Because if you talk to good landlords, and we got so many of them, I talk to them all the time, they don't have that problem because they know what they're doing. I'm not saying that this particular landlord you may be talking about isn't a good landlord, but this concept of vacant being difficult and all that, no, it's not. As soon as your place is vacant, secure it and do what you need to do. Because a squatter has to be in a place for a particular time in order for them to start to be able to have those rights. So if you move on it immediately, someone won't be there for 30 days or 40 days or 50 days or however many days it is. So we have to make sure that, just like they do in Pittsburgh, see, Pittsburgh doesn't have this problem, right? Brighton doesn't have this problem. So why is vacant complex in the city of Rochester? Everything is always more complex when you're dealing with poorer folks or in a city that's a challenge. And that's the problem that we have to change in our city because we think that we should just accept some of these things. We don't have to accept them. We don't have to accept them. And it's not complex. It's easy. You got a vacant structure that's next to a grandmother that's lived in her house for 40 years, and these are all real examples. We need to say, deal with your property before it happens. And if they don't, team up with some landlords that know what the hell they're doing, because we got a lot of them in the city. Any other questions? Yes.
Are there specific neighborhoods that you're seeing this happen more in than other neighborhoods?
Well, it's in a lot of neighborhoods, but of course, you know, they disproportionately fall in poorer neighborhoods, right? We know that, 14605. The reason why Councilmember Patterson is here, Northwest, Northeast. I mean, those are where we're seeing a lot of this, is in the Northwest and Northeast. And because there's this perception that, oh, these are poor neighborhoods, they want this stuff. But remember, the word neighborhood is in there. And in every single one of those neighborhoods, you have somebody that's been living there for a long period of time. And I have to remind people that, because some people just come through, they pass through in the neighborhoods. So for some people, if you're a reporter, for example, it might just be a story that you're telling, right? You're going into a neighborhood that you might not be familiar with, you're telling a story. But in that neighborhood where you're telling your story is where someone has lived for 40 years or 30 years, or a kid that walks to that school every day that has to live next to a vacant property for someone who may not be invested in the city of Rochester, but sees it as a quick buck. And then when they realize it wasn't a quick buck and wasn't as easy as they thought it was, they walk away from it and make Rochester look bad, and really makes good landlords look bad, because you have these people who have absolutely no business doing business in our city. And we hope that this will put an end to it. So I'll take one more question on this, and then I'll take any off topics that you might have. Then I got to wrap up because I got to go plant some trees at Highland Park. Yes.
So tenants were really advocating for good cause eviction on the state level. As the mayor of the city who would be deeply affected by that, what's your opinion of it? And do you believe, because it's not part of the state budget, do you believe that this city legislation will meet some of the objectives of good cause eviction?
We said that, and that's what we said. Because one of the things that I try to do is see, I don't like telling people that we have the power to do things that we can't. So we didn't have any power over good cause eviction. I don't have any power of what they do at the state. So I have to do everything that I can here within our purview, and we believe that this will help. We believe that Rochester will be a model. I was on a call the other day, and Rochester is a model, for example, for affordable housing. We've built more affordable housing in the Northeast in the last probably 7 years than other areas of the state are looking to do. So we are looking to be a model. We can't rely on the state or federal government to do certain things because we don't control them. And so we have to make sure that we try to do. Will it solve all the problems? Maybe not, but we think that this will make a huge difference in the city of Rochester.
It's not a part of the city legislation. Did you believe
It's not, Deanna, we don't have authority over good cause. The state has to be state legislation.
I mean, the city could have passed something that's very much like good cause.
No, we cannot. No, we cannot. No, we cannot. We cannot. That's been, as you know, City Council took that up, and it was determined from the law that we cannot do that. That is strictly state purview. Preemption, the state preempts us from doing that. And it's very important, and this is why this is so very important. I can't stress this point enough, because the question you just asked, I mean, the fact that you didn't know that, and I think that gives people false hope. So then you have people coming to the city saying you're supposed to be doing, that's the state law. So it's very important that we do what we can within our purview, and I'll let Linda expound on the legality of that as well.
Albany tried to do good cause eviction. It was requested that we do it. I made the legal determination that it was not within our power, that we were preempted. Albany did it. The courts have told Albany they don't have the power. So it is now, Albany's going to probably try to take it to the Court of Appeals, but 2 levels of courts have said it's not local government power.
That's good to know. I'll still
Yeah.
make that part.
Please, thank you. Who? All right, last question. All right, last question. How?
So, Ms. Kingsley, quick question for you too. So, back chats, we talk about that, things that are called basically drug drive-throughs. When people call in, how difficult is it to get into these homes and remove these people? Whether they have a great landlord just running a great business, how do you get them out?
Well, that's the landlord's responsibility. A landlord can remove a tenant who's creating a nuisance, who's violating the law. If the police have been to the property a number of times because something's going on there, all that landlord's got to do is take those police reports, go down to city court, and they will get an eviction. I cannot tell you, you had your question about landlords who can't get people out. I cannot tell you how many times we've had code enforcement properties that have come up to my office. We have a landlord who has not responded to the notice and order, blamed it on the tenants, and then we check city court and they haven't even tried to file an eviction. So that's where, if you're going to own property, then you have the responsibility to control your tenant. Just like when we have to break down doors on a warrant because a landlord is allowing drug dealers to live there, I take the position, I'm not paying you, stop renting to drug dealers. It's,
And that's what I'm referring to on, I called your office yesterday to get a comment about, the J Street location where a search warrant was executed yesterday. So that landlord's part of the business. He's running that business along with the tenants inside of it. We have receipts and emails and calls into the city, into 911, trying to get this addressed, and it gets shut down. The next day it pops back up. I was there at 11:30 yesterday, 1:30 yesterday. They're selling out the side of the house.
well, this is a challenge we work with. Sometimes if it's flagrant enough, we can get the government to allow us to do a foreclosure and take the house from the landlord.
For this location?
I can't talk about a specific location.
Just one more question, with all due respect. Certainly, landlords are telling us just the opposite. They say the legislation, state legislation passed in 2019, makes it very difficult to get rid of a problem tenant, even a tenant with criminal behavior. What do you say to those landlords?
Well, the attorney we hired as our housing attorney worked for 10 years on the other side, on tenant rights. So he certainly knows the issue. And he tells me that if you do the process, you do it properly, especially now, the courts were shut down for a long time and they weren't doing evictions. They are doing evictions again. It is a process, but you have to do it. Sometimes you've got to spend a little money and retain counsel to do it, but it is, I won't say easy, but it is certainly within the prerogative of a landlord to get out a tenant who's committing criminal conduct.
And I wanted to just ask one more, just to kind of summarize what I said.
Okay,
We got
last
hung
one,
up on the complex, vacant word earlier. What I'm referring to is this house on Goodman Street.
Yeah.
The people are called whatever, I'm not going to go to law school, rollover tenants.
Right.
They tried to evict it, COVID happened, the lady moved out, now these people are in the house. You got to start the eviction process over
Yes, but as long as they're doing that, we would work with a landlord. We're not going to come after a landlord who's trying.
But how do we speed up that process to get these people out so this landlord?
Well, that's for the courts. I don't control the courts. I wish I did, but I don't. So that's for the courts. But
Thank you.
as
Thank
long
you.
as they're working.
Thank you, everybody. Very important, it was Patrick Musinek's birthday earlier this week. Happy birthday to Patrick Musinek. Let him know that. It was a happy belated birthday to Patrick. You got, okay, so any off topics that we have? Briefly.
For the chief, just an update on all the crime and yesterday in the city, the shootings and whatnot?
Well, I'll let the chief weigh in on this, but I will say this. Look, disputes, we have to continue to encourage people. When you have a dispute with somebody, try to have a conversation before you use a firearm. But we will vigorously pursue individuals that continue to decide to pick up a firearm instead of having a conversation. And I will tell you, all those shootings yesterday were the result of nonsense. Chief?
Yeah, obviously we're very early in the preliminary investigation on those, but I can tell you every incident from yesterday is the direct result of a violent retaliatory dispute that led to violence. When you look at the overall, I mean, don't get me wrong, one shooting is one shooting too many. Our goal is always to get down to zero. But when you look at where we're at, we're still ahead of the curve, knock on wood if I had some wood. We have a long way to go. And it's not going to be steady forward progress. Sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and unfortunately that's what we saw yesterday. But it's nothing different than we have been saying. They're the result of violent retaliatory disputes. When you look at the big picture, the rolling 365 average, which is a number that I love to look at, so it goes back 365 days from today. We've had 301 shooting incidents. That is the lowest it has been since October of 2020. We've had 14 homicides this year. Again, 14 too many. 9 of those were the result of gunfire. But when you look at last year at this point, we had 26. The Major Crimes Unit continues to have a very high solvability rate. 2 officers last night just on Lyle Avenue took another gun off the streets doing proactive patrol. They stopped this gentleman, he had a probable cause, he had a gun on him. Why was he walking on Lyle Avenue with a gun on him? Because no one's afraid to walk on Lyle. The number of illegal guns hasn't changed. They've been there. It's the same constant. They come from the same sources. The difference is the bad guys aren't afraid to walk around with their gun on them, because there aren't necessarily consequences that we were before. But we're going to keep going after them, we're going to keep arresting them, and we're going to keep doing our part, and we're going to keep working hard.
And just let me say, council voted on something that was very important on Tuesday. We are now treating shootings like homicides. Council voted on that. It's proactive. It's something that other cities that have had success in violence have employed, and that is a new tool that we have. And when you do that, that's a game changer. That will further reduce. It's not going to be, oh, somebody got shot, we're not going to worry about it. No. We're going to vigorously pursue shootings, and that means bringing in more resources, but also making sure that we work with the individuals that were shot. That's very successful. The other thing the council voted on Tuesday, which was also very significant, was dollars for advanced peace, the advanced peace program, in which we go after individuals that have a propensity to actually pull the trigger. We graduated one cohort last Friday, and we're going to have another cohort starting in, I thought I saw Vic, June. Another cohort in June. So, I mean, those are the types of things that we're going to have to continue to try to do. But these nonviolent shootings, they're life-altering, and we're going to make sure that we continue to vote on those things. Put those in front of council so they can vote to support those types of things. Dina.
I have a question for the chief. I'm just wondering, this targeting vacant housing, how much do you think that will improve or help the job of your officers?
Well, a lot of our locations where illegal activity is revolving around started as vacant locations. It's empty, so the drug dealers move in, they set up a gatehouse. And one thing, although I can't talk specific locations, is, you know, if it's a vacant location, we do a search warrant for drugs, we can board it up. If it's an owner-occupied location, we don't have that authority. So there'll be some cases where you'll see us do a search warrant, and then, you know, we walk away from the location. We don't have the authority to board everything if it's owner-occupied.
I have a question for you too, Chief. You know, speaking of people as well, and then we'll jump off the vacant housing and drug houses as well. They say they're calling 911, they're calling 311, they're calling the city. When they call 911, they say, quit calling, this isn't an emergency. Basically, we have bigger fish to fry. What else are they supposed to do? They feel like their hands are tied.
Well, I'm sure the verbiage is a little bit different. But if folks keep in mind, again, any kind of, we've been using the example of search warrants. There's a process to get a search warrant for a location. So it may appear that nothing is going on, but it takes time. There's a certain criteria we have to meet before we can go to a judge and say, please give us a search warrant for this location. You know, I can't just pick a house and, you know, someone tells me, Chief, they're selling drugs there. I can't just go kick in that door. And quite frankly, I wouldn't want to live in a country where the police could just kick in that door. But, you know, there's a process we have to follow. It's a very long established process. And sometimes it takes us time to get these search warrants. And then, so it may appear, and I understand the frustration, you know, but again, I can't tell everyone, hey, yeah, okay, I understand, I know about it. I got undercovers working on it, because it's just not.
Yeah, we have cases where, I mean, so we're on the front line. So what you're saying, we do every day, right up there in that office. But we can't tell someone, hey, oh yeah, we're doing it. But when they see it, sometimes they come out and applaud, like they did at one recently, right? But it took 6 months to be able to build the case to be able to do that. And I think that that's the message that we try to send from our office, that we know it's documented, but sometimes it takes time to do it because we just can't snap our fingers and get it done, which is frustrating for the neighborhood. And I clearly sympathize with them. And we want people to call and report that, because they deserve to have a neighborhood that's free of drugs and blight and nonsense that's happening in their community. So we love those folks, because they are bringing to our attention the importance of things that need to happen in the city. So with that, thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Thank you for coming early. I know it's early on a Friday morning. I appreciate you taking the time and reporting on this. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, sir.